So what we're going to do now is a resting hand splint. And my pattern looks a little bit different probably to most other, because I always use two tabs. These tabs will enable me to actually keep the position and the compression around the wrist. I usually do not recommend to do an application like this, because the radius and ulnar rotation means that when we do the fitting like this and then rotate the patient back in, the splint will slide. So these tabs is an excellent way to do it. I'm using a B-cast mini perforated 3.2 millimeter material. So now the material is ready. I will remove it. It's soft. The first thing I do is I position that one directly under the patient like this. Make sure that I have position of the thumb and the fingers, and then I use the two tabs, basically running the material with a little bit of compression, pressing it together like that. Then it holds in place circular, and then I can control the patient by lifting up carefully like this. This is a quite complex kind of application, because we have to control, extend the wrist, control everything at the same time. We have to do this slow and controlled. Most of the splint stability is actually going to come from the ulnar side, so it's important not to make it too low with that application. So. Now the material starts cooling and becoming more stable. I always check for my wrist angulation, the compression, angulation of MCP, PIP, DIP, also the positioning on the thumb, and after that then I basically can remove the splint. And this is basically the result. The tabs here are then later on cut away, and I will then do final adjustments on the strips. So what I will do now is I have actually opened the strips that actually held the splint in place. And the first thing I can do is actually start marking where I need to do my adjustment. There's a couple of areas here that I can actually from the beginning cut away. I will also cut away basically the strips that I have here. I have really no need for them any longer. They have only been my assistants actually holding in place. Most importantly, on the ulnar side, I make sure that it's not too tight here. I want to have it a little bit wider, and yet I have to make sure that the height of the splint is actually not getting cut down too much, because then I get more flexion in the splint. So we will remove that, and I will use my scissor basically to do the...
A bit more in the center. Yeah, thank you.
If we now see, we have done the cutting off a lot of the materials, and in this case, so now we have cut away the material. We can still see that on the ulnar side I need to do a little bit further adjustment. I also have to make sure that I don't have pressure over the caput ulna head. The angulation of the MCP looks really good. The thumb also I need to do some further adjustment, but this I can continue basically to do by rolling the material with the water bath. So So after that, when we have done the lining, then I will consider to do the straps basically onto the patient. So now our resting hand splint in B-Class 3.2 mini perforated is ready. We have cut the basic outline. We will then do a little bit on the edging as well. But we'll just try and see the fitting of the splint. So it actually, and it fits very good on the patient. We will do some adjustments to the edges and also to the lower part, just in order to have less pressure on the edges. So I'm just moving the thermoplastic into the water. Just make sure to heat this specific area that you need. I hold it for around about 20 seconds, and after that I move it up, and then I can gently just work the edge so it becomes really smooth. I always try to bend the end of the splint so it actually has a little bit less risk of pressure. So the material that I have here has a loop surface here and a special Neptune lining here that is breathable. And what I use is I utilize my standard pattern that I did this thermoplastic splint, and I make sure that I have an overlap on that. And then I basically just do the final adjustment on the pattern. Make sure to have at least 1 to 2 centimeter additionally onto the pattern, so in order to fit the splint. So after that I will start cutting the material, and I cut usually within the line so I get the ink on the outside of my pattern like that. So now the outline is cut, and it's actually ready to be fitted in there. I might have to do some further adjustment, but that is something that I will do when I apply that onto the splint. Do the edging taping, and I'm going to use a self-adhesive micro fleece. And with this micro fleece, I insert it usually on the inside like that, directly onto the edge. And then I fold it in around the material, continuing basically around. And then I might stretch the material slightly just to cover that edge so it becomes smooth and soft. Now the resting hand splint is ready. We have basically put the edging lining on there. I put 2, 3, 4 basically hook parts there. Connected that with a strap that is double-sided loop but elastic, and then I connected them also with some additional hook tabs. Makes it quite easy to do the application. So we'll try this on the patient now. We'll put the hand basically into the splint. I start by applying the strap around the wrist. And as you can see, I have separated the strap into 2 straps. So it kind of makes it easier to do the application. So I can run with a quite individual compression around the wrist. Once it's attached there and secure, then I can go over on the finger strap. The finger strap is quite wide, and it basically goes over the PIP and the DIP. The thumb I've made into semi-elastic. I have 2 hook parts that actually is offset from each other, so I can pull the thumb down and attach it to the hook part, and then I basically end with the lower strap. And the lower strap I always apply just a little bit in front of the edge, so it doesn't really push the splint in. So. So now we're going to prepare to make a replaceable lining that we can basically take out and wash. So what I will do here is I will use the low profile hook self-adhesive, and I will attach that into the splint in certain areas, just in order to keep the pattern in place. So just attaching it like that. I always make sure that I try to cover the areas quite close to the edge. So I have a bottom attachment and a side attachment that allows me to stretch the lining. So in my splint I have now attached several small pieces of the self-adhesive low profile. And instead of putting one large strip, I much more rather prefer to put a lot of small strips because it allows me to fit easier. Then I take my lining and basically attach that to the splint, and I start basically by going into the central part, pressing the lining in place, and then I attach it, folding it basically on to the hook side. So any kind of wrinkles, then you just open up, stretch the material slightly, and then attach again. So now when I cut the lining, I can basically with the hook just attach it into the splint and pushing it down, stretching it, and it actually configurates to the whole splint. What this means is I actually get a splint now that I have a lining on that I can remove and wash. So there's no necessity to actually wash the actual splint by itself. The lining will do the same. So I will apply this again on the patient like that. I start once again with the wrist when I do the closure. The lining actually sticks out over the splint, so that means that I don't need to have any additional kind of edging tape or pattern actually on there. So applying it like that. Can go with this one at the same time.